Hello and welcome to the eSNAP Benefits Changes webinar. I'm Megan Ruby. I'm a SNAP Ed educator with the University of Minnesota Extension, and I am co-presenting with my colleague Sam Roth. And we will be talking about three main things today. Understanding the changes to the eSNAP benefits, adjusting your budget to meet the loss of income, and we'll be going through some local food resources. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Minnesota received a waiver from the federal government to temporarily provide extra SNAP benefits known as Emergency SNAP or eSNAP. These temporary increases boosted households' monthly benefit to the maximum allotment for their household size, or if they were already getting the max, households received an additional $95 a month. Federal officials have declared the COVID-19 emergency SNAP allotments to end after February. Because eSNAP is issued the month after SNAP is approved, most households will get their last emergency SNAP payments in March, and benefits will return to the standard amount in April. And this could cause a lot of hardship for families. So if this is the first time you're hearing about this, you might be thinking, what can I do? There are a few things that SNAP participants can do to make sure that they are maximizing their regular benefits. Since we've had eSNAP for so long, regular calculated benefit amounts have been adjusted for the cost of living. Or if you're new to SNAP, you may not know the regular benefit amount. You can do this by two different ways. You can contact your county offices and talk to financial workers that can access case information and find out your regular benefit amount. Keep in mind that county offices are experiencing high numbers of calls and processing a lot of applications for SNAP households. So there may be a wait time. If you're able to check benefits online, it may be faster, a faster way to figure out your regular benefit amount. Another thing you could do is checking your deposits online. So seeing how much you're getting so that you can prepare when you're meal planning. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But you can check your online deposits to see what's coming. We'll talk about this a little bit later in the webinar, but we will talk about some different ways to stretch your SNAP dollars. So, buying lower cost proteins like beans compared to animal proteins are some different ways that we'll talk about that in a little bit. But then also, saving your SNAP benefits from month to month too is another way to stretch that food dollar. And I'm going to turn it over to Sam next.
So losing our SNAP benefits means that it's a loss to our income as well. And you may not have thought about those benefits coming through as income, but it is a way you're expending money through food and receiving income to be able to pay for that. So as you're thinking about as we're going through this webinar, or as you've heard about the emergency SNAP benefits ending, what are some concerns you have related to that income loss? Think about how this will impact your family. It's possible it's been 3 years since COVID started, that there's been a lot of change in your family to the better, a higher income, maybe both people are back working. There could be other things that are happening in your life that you may not feel this as much as you think you will. We also want to think about what changes will your family need to make to adjust if your change in your income hasn't changed as much to the good as it was 3 years ago. So one of the things to think about is that when we think about change, we want to be able to do a few things. We want to be able to respond to the change. So being aware that this is happening and figuring out how we're going to address it. We need to adapt to that change and adjust our income, our expenses, how we think about our money. And then we need to conform. And that just means we have to accept the fact that There is no longer emergency SNAP benefits, and we need to move on to the next aspect of what our income really is and what our expenses are going to be with that change that's happening. So we are going to react to it. One of the things I am always aware of when people are having changes in income is that when our loss of income happens, whether it's due to a job loss, a change in benefits, those sorts of things, is that our income changes from March to April. You still receive the benefit in March, it's now April, and your income may have decreased by $95 or it may have decreased by hundreds of dollars. The thing is with most people in our human behavior is that we do not change our spending on average from 3 to 6 months later to adjust to that income change. And as you can imagine, for people, as their income has dropped, but their spending is a much slower decrease, is that oftentimes we'll find ourselves in financial situations where we might be taking on more debt and using our credit cards more than we want to, or having to take out loans for things that normally you wouldn't take out a loan for. So it's just important to be aware of that aspect of our lives and how, we behave as humans when it happens. When we're thinking about adjusting to income and changing our expenses, it's important to involve our family members in conversations about the spending decisions. It doesn't just affect the adults at the table, it affects the children as well. And if you have multiple generations, it's going to affect everybody in your household. So let them know what's going on in case they don't. Help them understand the tough choices that must be made, and let them have a voice in making that decisions. And you might be surprised at the different things that your children could come up with as you talk with them through this situation. So make sure you talk, give them facts, take a moment to pause and listen to what other people are saying, involve them in the decision-making process and in carrying out that. So going to the grocery store, set a reminder that, hey, don't forget we have lost some money with our emergency SNAP ending, and we're going to make smarter decisions. We may not be able to get some things we have gotten in the past, and then help to support each other through this process to make it easier for everybody as well. So as you're getting used to this adjustment, really size up your situation. How long will this present financial situation last? eSNAP have ended, and so we no longer will have this as an option. However, you may still qualify for regular SNAP dollars, or you might actually have an increase from your previous, depending on what your income has changed over the course of the years. Think about how much monthly income you can count on. So look at your past bank statements, at your last salary. If you're salaried, how much is that? All those sorts of things. How much money do you need to cover your essential monthly expenses, to keep a roof over your head, to keep your family fed, to heat and cool? Utilities are important, as well as transportation. Also think about if you owe any creditors. That could include your credit cards. It could include medical and other expenses. And what is that total amount? And are there any assets that you have that you could be used to pay off debt? So this could be something, maybe you have a third vehicle or a second vehicle that you don't really use very much. Maybe now is the time to sell it to help you ease this transition. Think about the debts you do have and what are the most important to repay first, and what debts could be satisfied by surrendering or giving back the item of things that you may not use or that you bought in a little bit of haste, that you're kind of like, that was not the smartest purchase I had, so I'm going to give it back and get, store credit or cash back into my pocket. We do have a whole publication on adjusting to income loss. And as I said earlier, eSNAP dollars, SNAP-ed dollars are a benefit and a need to be included when we're looking at our income. So as we're adjusting that, it's important to set our spending priorities when income falls. So that conversation with your family, what are your priorities? What are the things you're going to get first? Decide which bills to pay first. There are certain bills that you need to pay. If you have mortgage or rent, those are probably going to be priority number one versus other things. Perhaps maybe this year we're not playing soccer or doing another school activity just because we can't afford it at the moment. Make the most of what you have. You might find some resources sitting in a drawer or in a closet that you forgot about, and maybe family game night play comes back in and you play board games or borrow them from the library instead of going to a movie and that kind of stuff. That leads us right into, what are some strategies for spending less when we're looking at what our family is doing and how we're going to adjust that? How can we have more, I always call it free fun. And the good thing is that we're coming up on spring. All of us are wanting to get outside. And so there's a lot of ways to just get outside instead of trying to spend money at the mall, at movies, at other places as well. If you do have some debt issues, talk with your creditors, talk about maybe seeing if you can lower the APR, a monthly payment. If you can extend a loan, those are all different ways to be able to deal if you're really having to pinch pennies and not sure how you're going to pay for your needs. And then there's always the system of bartering. Maybe it could be with a neighbor, maybe it could be with your landlord. If you rent, about services, picking up lawn care and having to reduce rent, those sorts of things. Use the bartering system, negotiate and talk with whoever is in whoever you have the power to do that with as well. Again, when we're adjusting to some losing a little bit of income, it's important for us to decide which bills to pay first. We do want to try to avoid to use our credit cards to continue to add to any debt that we have or to build new debt. Try to avoid taking out a home equity loan if you do own a home, and to avoid borrowing money from financial institutions. If you do have a family support system and it's pretty common for you to borrow money back and forth, that would be the only place where you'd probably be okay to not avoid that aspect of it. We do want to focus on cutting some of our spending and adjusting to that reduced income, working with our creditors to reduce any payments we have, and then asking for help to your family and or close friends if you do need some additional assistance. Some strategies to look at, again, what are the essentials that you need? We often talk about needs and wants when it comes to finances, and all of us have some common needs. Like I said, we have food, that's a common need. We need shelter, we need drinking water. In Minnesota, if you're here, we need some transportation, whether that's riding a bicycle, having a vehicle, or using public transportation. Those are all things that we all need. And so the easiest things to get rid of are some of our wants. So maybe it's thinking about what our family wants, different activities we may do, cutting back on those, looking for ways to make them cheaper. You may also need to reduce some spending for basic needs. Food is a need that we all have, but it doesn't necessarily mean that grabbing a soda and a Snickers bar and a prime rib, which I don't even buy, are those aren't a basic need. We just, we, as Megan mentioned about using beans and other sources of protein, or um, looking at community gardens, using food shells, all those kinds of stuff to help reduce spending for our basic needs. If you have a budget, to revise that budget with this adjustment to your income, to make sure to look at that, thinking about where you're spending things, looking at your internet streaming services, additional things that you have. Are they worth it to continue to use them? Is there a reason why you have them? Or can you do with a lesser amount or a less amount of services as well? You can also look at increasing your income. This could be a temporary or a permanent thing by hiring yourself out for different jobs. It could be getting a part-time job. If only one person is working, a second person could decide to go back to work for a part-time or full-time. And you can use credit. This always comes with a word of caution, to not overextend yourself on credit, because you still do need to be able to pay it back, and not get into a worse financial situation than you may be at this current moment. So we want to make sure, if you are going to use credit, to use that credit wisely as well. If you have had a budget, you probably already know this, but if you haven't, or if it's your first time, there are some benefits to having an idea of how you're going to spend our money. It's very natural for us to spend our money, but with a spending plan, it can help us make our decisions about how we're going to spend our money, and then be able to hold us to that so that we can make sure we're providing for our needs before our wants, so that we always have that food, shelter, water, and transportation covered. It matches our spending to our current income, so we're balancing that and not overextending ourselves. And it helps to prevent family arguments over money. And when all of a sudden we have an adjustment, it's important to avoid family arguments or lessen them if possible. So if this is your first time thinking about doing a spending plan, it's important to start with, identify your income. What amount can you plan for? So if you have a job that is salary, it's pretty easy. What do you get paid every month or 2 weeks or weekly? If you have a job that's has more flexibility in your pay, you want to look back over the last couple of months and take an average of what you can expect to take home, and then make a plan for those times that you have more money to save some away to have, so if you have a month that you have less money than on average. Once you've been able to identify your income, you will want to determine your monthly expenses and think about what must be paid first. So again, meeting those needs first and then adding in some wants as needed. And then the last step is to really balance that bottom line. And, are you have money left over, or do you have a perfect zero balance? Or are you behind? And how do we adjust that to make sure that we're able to not be behind? So again, just to review a little bit more in depth, identify our income. This is what our take home amounts are. So thinking about your earnings, if you happen to be on unemployment because you have a seasonal job, is there savings you can draw from? Any Social Security, child support, any public assistance. So if you receive utilities assistance, your current SNAP benefits, that kind of stuff, all of those things you want to identify as your income. The next thing you want to do is, again, think about your monthly expenses. What do you have as the highest priority? This should have been decided by your family. Are there areas you can be reduced, and how much can you afford to spend? And it's important to think about all types of our spending. So your housing, your utilities, your food, your medical care. If you do have credit cards or loans, to those payments, what is the minimum monthly payment you have to make? Any of your insurances, maintaining and operating your household, clothing and personal care, if you're going to school and recreation, all those things. And everybody has other items, things that are important to their families that they prioritize to spend money on. So it's important to include those as well when you're looking at it. And then once you add all your income, add all your expenses, you minus your income, your expenses from your income, and that's your bottom line. And like I said, it's either in the positive where you might have money left over and can figure out, is that money we're going to save, or is that money we're going to allocate to other places where we kind of cut a lot? Do we have a perfect zero balance, meaning we have income coming in enough to cover all of our expenses, or are we running negative, which means our income doesn't meet all of the expenses that we have from month to month? And so again, depending on which one of those three scenarios you have, are you able to cut spending if you're overspent? Are there ways you can increase your income? And, are there assets that you currently have, a car that you don't use as much, an old bike that your child has, you just haven't gotten rid of? What do you have that could be used to be able to help with that bottom line as well? When you're doing this, you also want to think about, if you don't pay a bill, what happens? So anything that is secured, usually via a loan, your home, if you own a home, if you have a vehicle, your furniture, if you're currently paying on that with a loan, appliances, that kind of stuff, all of those can be repossessed if you do not pay that bill as well. So that's important to prioritize those if they're important to you. Or it might be the decision that, we don't ever need this recreational vehicle we have. We don't boat, we use our camper enough, and maybe it's time to resell it, or give it back and get reimbursed for whatever is left on those sorts of things. So think about that too as you're prioritizing your bills. You also want to look at if you have any debt. So again, loans, credit cards, and then look at what those balances are and how much you're paying in interest rate and what is the minimum amount due for each of them as well. Because, ideally we want to pay off our debt faster. However, we also want to make sure we have enough money to balance out through everything that's important to us. Um, so it's important, if you haven't done this and you have a decrease of your income and need to adjust, to understand what that picture looks like. So consider paying off any low balance loans first, because then you just have a little bit of less stress with that. If you've purchased something and it's a newer item and you can return it, maybe you decide now to return it because it's not worth it to you anymore, that stress of having to pay it off and keeping that. You could sell some items. There's a whole bunch of ways on social media to sell items. You can have a good old fashioned rummage or garage sale, depending what you call it. You can barter with somebody for other items as well. Are ways to be able to help yourself get out of a little bit of a debt. In these situations, oftentimes, we talked about avoiding using more credit card accounts. And if you currently have outstanding balances on those credit card accounts, always make sure you're keeping that minimum monthly payment to keep your accounts current. Typically, that's lower than the payoff for that credit card, but that is a percentage of what you owe. And so that will adjust based on how much you have paid off of it. You also want to compare interest rates to ensure the lowest interest rate. If you do have a credit card that has quite a bit of, it has a higher interest rate, it never hurts to call the company and just say that, I've lost this benefit. Was wondering if you would be able to lower my interest rate temporarily. Sometimes they'll do it for 6 months. Sometimes they'll do it permanently, but you never know if you don't ask if they can help you out with that. And if you find yourself struggling with always using your credit cards accounts, it may be a wise decision to destroy the credit cards or to close accounts of not major credit cards. So if you have a lot of stored credit cards, to close those accounts so that you're not tempted to go shopping at those places as well. Um, if you're looking for a way to help organize all of these, if you have multiple debts, we do recommend PowerPay. It came from the University of Utah State University Extension, and it's a personalized self-directed debt elimination plan where you can go in and put all your debts into, what the current monthly payment is, their annual percentage rate, how many payments, it'll tell you then how many payments it'll take you to pay off that card or that loan, and it'll also tell you how much you paid in interest. The nice thing about PowerPay is that it gives you that basic information, but then it also will tell you if you pay off, if you're able to give additional money to pay off loans and credit cards, it'll implement that into the equation, and it'll tell you how you can pay off your loans and credit cards the fastest way, by looking at paying off the highest interest first, and then going from there. And it'll say, if you have 4 different places that you have that you owe money to, it'll say, debt A, you're going to pay this, $400 a month until it's paid off, and then you're going to transition and still be paying your minimum payments on B, C, and D. Once A is paid off, then you're going to put that money towards B, and it's going to be this much for this many months, and then that'll be paid off, and it'll just keep going down the list. So it's a great little kind of checklist and plan for you to be able to get rid of that debt as needed. Why is this important? Is that we don't want you to forget about your credit report. Typically in this situations, a lot of people will miss payments or just not pay because of the financial stress and trying to adjust. And that does go on your credit report, and that can damage your ability to get credit or increase cost of credit. So if you're currently somebody who's working and doing well with credit, we want to make sure you can continue that as well. And if you're just not sure, I think I have some debts out there, but I don't know what they are. What do I do? Make sure you check your credit report. Annualcreditreport.com is where you go for a uh, free credit report from the 3 different financial bureaus. And that'll give you a list of all the debts you currently have, what you owe, if anything's in collections, who carries that loan and all that stuff, if you've missed any payments. Um, and that our credit report is what our credit score is based off of. So if you have, a credit score you're not super happy about and not sure knowing why, you find out by going to your credit report. So that's financially how you can kind of get your stuff in order. Megan is going to take us through and give us a few more tips and talk about food resources.
Thanks, Sam. You really provided some great tools and tips and resources to help with someone's budget, and it really can be empowering to take control of that and see things change for the better, hopefully. And that's what we're hopefully sharing today. Like Sam said, I'm going to share a little bit more about your food budget and how you can control that and look at that a little bit more. There we go. So talking a little bit more about food insecurity and how and what that means. The USDA defines food insecurity as a lack of consistent access to enough food for every person in a household to live an active, healthy lifestyle. This can be a temporary situation for a family, or it could last a long time. And if you see the stats on the screen, food insecurity is a problem in our state, in our nation. Food insecurity has doubled from 2018 to 2020. In 2018, there was about 11% of households were food insecure, and that went up to 22.7% in April of 2020. And keep in mind those dates included the COVID-19 pandemic, so that I think exacerbated that a little bit more. But costs for food went up. Like Sam was saying, people's incomes have changed, and so that is something that a lot of families experience that. But there's some things that can help families get through that time. Some government resources like SNAP. We're talking a lot about SNAP today, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. If you're not on SNAP, contacting your local county human service office to apply for that. That's a great way to help stretch your food dollar. It is a supplemental source of income, so it's not meant to cover your entire food budget. So you do have to have a plan and know how much you're getting from that, and also from other income as well, like Sam talked about. There is the special supplemental nutrition program for women, infants, and children, which is the WIC program. That is for pregnant women and children ages 5 and under. And so that is also run through the county that you live in, and a great resource where you can get some staple food items and support nutrition education support through your WIC office. Also, another government resource is the National School Lunch Program. So if you have children in school, schools provide great breakfast and lunch programs that help fill a nutritional need for kids during the school day. In Minnesota, actually recently, the governor signed a bill into law providing free school breakfast and lunch for all Minnesota students participating in schools. And this just was passed in March of 2023, which is really exciting for our state. That will not be going into effect until next school year. And so hopefully that'll help a lot of families that maybe haven't been able to get free or reduced lunches to help pay for that and kind of stretch their food dollar in a different way. Some other tips as well, meal planning can really help a family save money. So by doing so, just like Sam talked about, sitting down and having a budget and writing it down and communicating with family members, you can do the same with meal planning. Think about what meals you would like for the week. actually make a shopping list and writing it down, and ideally sticking to your list is something you want to do. I like to share this tip: shop your household, shop your cupboards first, and use what you have in your meal plan for the week, so that you're not going and buying extra stuff. That's a really great way to save money. Buy foods based on when you'll use them. So hopefully within the next week, bulk shopping is a great way to save money. But if you don't plan on using it, usually that can cost a little bit more money. So only buy what you need for that week or month, or however you could do meal planning to work for you. Check ads first, either in print if you get a newspaper. Check your local grocery store ads. Also using just going online and looking up your local grocery store if they have a print or an online version of the ads. That's a really great way to save money and kind of see what you can expect going to the grocery store before actually going there and making some decisions there. Another great tip for meal planning is asking family members for their input. I have kids, and I know including kids in meal planning and just food preparation is good overall. But kids are always a little bit more picky sometimes. So if you're asking them first, they might be more apt to eat what you are cooking. And this could be for meals and snacks. And they may be more likely to eat and enjoy them, because we don't want to throw our food in the garbage. It's just like throwing money in the garbage. We don't want to do that. Some more shopping strategies to save money: use frozen or canned fruits instead of fresh fruits or vegetables. Frozen and canned are just as good as fresh. There might be a little bit of a consistency difference that you may not be used to, but nutritionally speaking, they're still a great option and a great way to save money. Another tip I love to share is if you're looking for hamburger meat, sauteing maybe you found a higher fat content of hamburger that was less expensive than the 99% fat-free kind. You can save money by buying the higher fat hamburger and sauteing it and pouring off the excess fat, but then also going an extra step to run that under warm water after cooking to remove some of that fat that can kind of stick in your meals. And so that's a great way to save money and also be conscious about eating less fat too. I talked about this in the beginning, but replacing animal meat sources with beans or lentils are a great way to save money. Be mindful when you are buying frozen vegetables and even canned ones. Try to find vegetables that don't have special seasonings or sauces on them. That can be a little bit more expensive, and if you like it that way, you could do it at home and add your own. That can help save a little bit of money, and it might help you, eat more of that too. If you need to add a little bit of cheese to some steamed broccoli, or add your own salt, that's a great way to save money and to be mindful of health conscious as well. Also saving scraps of fresh produce like onions, carrots, and celery, throwing them in a Ziploc bag or a Tupperware and putting it in the freezer. And then over time, as you do that, you can make your own soup stock instead of buying your own. Those are just some fun tips that I like to share with families. Next, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what other help is available. So food shelves are a great way to get a little bit extra help. If your community has a community food shelf, visiting that as often as you need or as often as you're able to is a great way to get a little bit more groceries. It's free. There are some resources here where you can actually go and click on a map from Hunger Solutions to see if there's a food shelf near you. Or there is the Minnesota Food Helpline for assistance. You can see the number is listed here. I already briefly talked about the WIC program. This is a great program for women and children. It provides food to low-income pregnant, postpartum, and breastfeeding women, infants, and children up to the age of 5. And there's a link there that you can find more information about that. Also, if you are 60 or over, the NAPS program is a great program to look into. You can get a free box of some staple items like commodity foods that do come from the federal government. So cheeses, some canned items, a shelf-stable milk is a common find in those NAPS boxes. And also there may be meal programs in your community, free meals, grab and go options. And there is a link through Hunger Solutions that can help see if there's a program near you. So we can share that as well. There are some non-food programs available that could help stretch your food dollar a little more, or just your budget. And so Lifeline is a federal program that helps disconnected phone or internet service. And so this is in Minnesota, it's the telephone assistance program. So this is, Sam talked about different ways to move money around in your budget. And so we often do need a phone or a computer to apply for SNAP. So this is a need and something that someone can look into. Energy assistant programs can help pay towards heat and electricity and past due water bills. I live up in greater Minnesota. Well, all Minnesota is quite cold in the winter. And so we do need heat. That is definitely a need that we need here in Minnesota. If you're in the Twin Cities Metro, there's some transit assistant programs. Also Amazon Prime. You can get a discount for that if you can provide, SNAP. If you're on SNAP, there's certain requirements for that you would have to qualify for, and even you can use your EBT card to buy groceries on Amazon as well. Even some museum discounts. Different ways to be creative to save money and still maybe have a social life if you have kids and you want to provide them with something. Just looking for different ways to find discounts can help you save money too. So to summarize our webinar today, try to keep a positive attitude when approaching changes. This can be a really stressful time. Take action quickly to make a plan, sit down, write it out on paper, have, family members that are or household members there, have communication around a spending plan, different ways that Sam shared about reducing spending can really help a household, and looking at community resources and programs that are there to help you. So we just want to thank you today for joining our webinar, and we hope you learned some tips about budgeting, saving money, and finding some food resources that will benefit you.